Hey everyone, welcome back to this video series about the embalmers who are on the front line handling those who are dying of COVID-19 related deaths or those who are just dying during this time. Death does not slow because of a pandemic, and we have an increase in death because of COVID-19 right now. So we're interviewing and talking to embalmers on the front line and what their experiences are right now. So check out some new interviews with more embalmers. All right, hey everyone, we are here with Matt Smith. You've all seen him if you've watched any of my videos. He is a trade embalmer, professional embalmer from over on the east side of Michigan, and he runs the Professional Embalmers Institute and does different modules on training. So wanted to touch base with Matt during this pandemic time because Matt has been smoking busy over on your side of the state. So give me a little just insight as to how your days are going right now.
Well, they've been, you hit the nail on the head. It's been busy. It's been really, really busy. And doing several calls a day, 5, 6, upwards to 8 and 10 sometimes embalmings a day. And the vast majority of them are COVIDs, for sure. I've done this month alone. I'm well over 60 COVID embalmings, and it's the 20th or 27th. I don't even know what day it is. 22nd, maybe 21st.
It is the 22nd.
Oh, okay. Well, lucky guess.
So how are you when you're going into prep? How are you being alerted that this is a COVID-19, contributory death? Deceased, and I mean, you're handling essentially, I would guess, every deceased as potentially, that they potentially have the disease, but how are you being told as a trade embalmer about this?
It's kind of funny because we should treat everyone as if they're infectious, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really, really good to know that when we are encountered with one that we're alerted to it. It's kind of like the medical profession. You treat everyone as if they're infectious, right? But it's always good to know what you're dealing with. And many times the way that I have been notified is right on the body bag. It's written COVID, right straight on the body bag with a red marker, permanent marker. Sometimes they're not though. And you just got to, first of all, again, as I reiterate, treat everyone as if they have it. But a real tell is once you bring the body out of the body bag or unzip that body bag, many will have the ventilator still in. Basically, medical waste is still on the body, and which really shouldn't be there, but that's the reality of it. And so if they have a ventilator, that's a real good indicator that this is a COVID patient. Many of them also that don't have the red marker or the ventilator, they'll have the mask on, the N95 mask or whatever, the droplet protective mask. And so that's a pretty good indicator. If they're in their 50s and 60s and they have a little bit of edema, I can almost guarantee that's a COVID patient at this stage of the game.
Well, that was going to be my next question. You've done, I've talked to some embalmers, they haven't done quantity that you have. So you're seeing maybe some things that are every case, possibly there's maybe a unique factor that to the deceased that have died of COVID-19. Are you seeing anything of essentially besides maybe edema because they've been in the hospital for a long period of time, or anything that you're seeing is unique to a COVID-19?
Yeah, there's, like in poker, you learn different tells. Once you get into this game a little bit, you see certain things that you say, oh yeah, that's gonna alert you to something. And certainly COVID is no different. The first time I took care of a COVID case, I went into it blindly and on full faith and trust in my PPEs and my training that I have. And here in Detroit, as many of your listeners probably already know, Detroit is a hot spot. And so there are several deaths that are taking place every day. And one of the tells is, during aspiration, there's a distinct difference in the lungs and how the trocar moves. And trocar is just basically an instrument used to assist the embalmer in preparing the body. For those of you that are listening that don't know what a trocar is, but and using that instrument in the lungs can really be an indicator. The edema, like we said, also the clotting. The clotting has been a very, very unique and different than typical bodies. The clotting that I see with these COVID cases is more like a coffee ground type of clotting, where they're just several tiny clots, and it's just very difficult to work out and to drain out of the venous system. And that's another indicator, but that's obviously that's during the embalming process. Lower body, lower extremity edema, and
well, and a lot of these deceased have probably been, stationary for a few days and for a little while, and that's why we sometimes see more clotting and the edema, because they're on IVs and pumping them with fluid while they're in the hospital and such. So that's probably why we're seeing some of that. Now, I know one embalmer was talking about really orange colored stuff coming from lungs. Are you seeing a different color?
Yeah, that's another sign, and it is that orangey, kind of milky red oranginess, that very, very mucousy purge that comes out of the nose and the mouth, and cleaning that up is has its own challenges, and it's very surreal, because as an embalmer, we're trained to be safe and be protected, but when you actually see that, knowing that is straight COVID-19 right there, and you're cleaning that out, you're literally hands-on, and it is very, very, it's just very surreal at times, and that's really why we did this kind of training program for embalmers to discuss the safety and how to handle these particular cases. I'm professional embalmers, which you can see that in the backdrop there on the television, to protect against that very thing and just be very, very safe. It can be very scary, very daunting.
What is one thing you are doing every time to make sure you're protecting yourself, aside from personal protective equipment? Is there anything to the body, like just one thing you're doing?
Yeah. Honestly, I got to give a shout out to the Lord there, because I'm a believer, right? So I've got this song that I always sing. Now, this has got nothing to do with protection on the physical realm of like what we're doing, but
right.
My belief is that it's a protection. I always sing this song. I will praise you in the storm, because I really feel like I'm in this crazy storm where I've got. Sometimes there was one day I counted 59 bodies around me, 59, and there was bodies to embalm just beyond belief, and it was just one after the other after the other after the other, and it was literally like a storm of bodies, and so I have that little song in my mind that I sing during it, but there is some treatments that I do that's unique. If you wanted to get into that, I could talk about the treatments a little bit.
Well, I don't want you to get into too many, because I know you do a lot in your training video, but if you want to just give one tip that you would say to maybe embalmers or those handling deceased or anything, what would be one key tip?
Aside from the PPEs, of course, I would say have your attention focused on the respiratory system, the lungs and the throat, the pharynx, the nose, the mouth, and get just step back for a second and get a full understanding of how the lungs operate and how they work with the diaphragm, and how air is moved from the lungs to, out of the mouth and out of the nose, and what comes out. And when we, as embalmers, are using instruments such as a trocar or putting any pressure on the abdomen, what are we potentially at risk for? And I already know that there's already some professional funeral directors and a medical examiner for sure that have contracted this from deceased bodies. So I do know that you can contract this from a dead body. So that fallacy, I guess I could say, that speculation that you can't catch it from a dead body, that's not true. You can. And
Well, and I get asked that a lot. So aren't you safe? The person's dead, so the virus has to be dead. And I'm like, no, it doesn't die with the person right away. Like, we're bringing it into the funeral homes where it's going with that deceased wherever they're going. And it's also on the living, as you know, we're working with the living. So there's
I can give a quick little rundown as I understand it. And, I'm no virologist, but this is how I understand it. When things like this come up, everyone becomes an expert, right? But I think it's very important to learn about what we're faced with, because, mortuary school was 100 million moons ago. And so we don't remember everything. Even though we're trained and we're licensed, it's good to make sure that we refresh ourselves on viruses and such. But here's basically the nuts and bolts of it. The virus is not alive. So many people say, man, how long does the virus live? Well, first of all, it doesn't live. It is active or inactive. And so we first of all, if we understand how the virus works, then we can understand a little bit better on how to protect ourselves. So the virus doesn't die with the body because the virus isn't alive. That's why the virus can remain active on surfaces, because it doesn't need a living body to quote unquote survive, because it's not alive. So what happens is, just real quick, the cells in the body, they reproduce, right? Umpteen times a second or whatever. They just keep, reproducing. But what happens is this virus infiltrates that cell, and then the cell just recognizes it as just a part of the cell, and when it duplicates, it carries that virus along with it, and it duplicates that way through cell reproduction. It eventually will take over the entire respiratory system, eventually killing the body. And then what happens is that those cells, once the body is dead, those cells stop reproducing. So then the virus stops reproducing. And then the body becomes basically a surface. And that virus will remain active. There's a few things that will kill, deactivate, I should say, the virus. That is time. Time will do it, because we've heard of the 72-hour law, right, or the 72-hour rule of the virus being active on certain surfaces. Like porous surfaces, it's 24 hours. On stainless steel, it's a lot much longer. So we do know that there is a cycle of activity or inactivity of the virus. So when the cells stop reproducing, the timer is on for this virus to become inactive. We just don't know how long exactly that is. And what happens then is, if we push air out of the lungs and that virus is still active and those droplets come out, yes, we're very much at risk. And aspiration becomes a real point of concern, because as we aspirate, we're drawing out liquids and virus out of the lungs exactly where it is. The epicenter in the body of this virus is in the lungs. And so we're drawing it out and we're splashing it into the slop sink, basically, or the source, the drainage system. So we have to be very careful of how we handle that. And so I recommend, before you ask me for a tip, here's my tip for those professionals that work in the preparation. Inject, make a small incision near the lungs, maybe right between a rib, and make an incision with a scalpel blade on either side. The reason I say that is because entering in with the trocar all by itself can add a pressure that you don't want. It's too much force. That could compress the lungs and pushing air out. So make a small incision with a scalpel blade, insert the trocar, and inject the lungs with either a disinfectant or a cavity fluid higher than 5% concentration. 5% concentration of formaldehyde is a very, very strong disinfectant, strong enough to deactivate viruses. So inject the lungs with cavity or disinfectant, and also down the throat and down the nose. It's all spelled out in the training that I have, but just quickly to talk about that. Yeah. Do that first, and then arterially inject the body. And I've never, ever, ever said delayed aspiration. I've never been proponent of that. So until now, I would recommend, if you can and you have the time, delay your aspiration. Wait, because we do know that a virus eventually becomes inactive. And if you can wait 72 hours before you aspirate, even better. But if you can't, that cavity fluid or disinfectant, that's inside the lungs will deactivate, do a nice job in deactivating. And then when you aspirate, hopefully it should be taken care of.
Now, PPE and personal protective equipment is one of our best things to protect ourselves. We hear a lot about in the medical community right now that they are in shortage and it's kind of hard to get what we need. Where are you at? You're doing multitudes of embalming. So where are you at in terms of in want or, reuse of things? Kind of what is your status?
Well, I'll tell you, an embalmer never wants to reuse disposable, right?
Right.
But we're running into a situation, many embalmers are running into the situation where they have to. Right now, I use a full face respirator. So you might even still see some marks on my face because I think I'm developing a rash on my face from using this respirator all day. And so I have the cartridges, the organic cartridges, and the N95 filters on those cartridges. But I kind of consider myself one of the lucky ones. I've had this, and I've been able to use it over and over, and clean it and disinfect it after each use because it is a reusable. For those of you that don't have that, you're stuck with the masks. And I've heard that some are disinfecting them with some sort of disinfectant spray, and then hanging them up to let them dry. I don't think that's ideal, but I think, in a storm that we're in, I think you do what you have to do to be protected. So
desperate times call for desperate measures. I think some people are whipping out all the resources and tricks that they might have to try to help keep themselves as protected as they can.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine. If all your choices are to throw it away and not have a mask or disinfect it, and then use it again, I would say that the latter is your better alternative.
Yeah,
for sure.
Now you have littles at home. You've got little ones. What is your concern about back and forth, and what precautions are you going and returning to home? Like how hot is the shower you're taking to scrub off at the end of the day? What are you doing?
Well, I'll tell you, I do. My wife and I have a system in place, and what we do is I call her, let her know. Now I am fully covered. Again, I'm fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate ones. I'm fully covered in a bodysuit when I embalm, and boot covers, and I have a hair net, even though I don't have hair, and I have my full face respirator on. I'm double gloved, nitrile gloves underneath with Microflex safe grips over the top, and I've got them duct taped to my suit. So I feel like I'm fully covered. Then I remove that and I dispose of those. Then I have separate shoes, so I disinfect my shoes, and then I switch my shoes out, and then I get in my vehicle and I drive. I have a disinfectant spray. Once I get in the vehicle, I spray my body down, the back of my neck, everywhere. And then once I get home, my wife has a bag in the garage with a towel, and I just get in my birthday suit, put all my clothes in the bag, and I wrap up in a towel and head right to the shower. And I keep it's still cold here in southeastern Michigan.
Yeah, we got snow today again.
Yeah, right. So I leave my coat in the garage. I leave my belt in the garage, and I let that sit. And after it's disinfected, I don't bring any of that in. My shoes, everything, and I go right to the shower. And I take 2 showers in that one shower. So I scrub everything down twice, and then I feel like I'm pretty good. The first 2 weeks, with the kiddos at home, were very, very stressful. I think I lost a few years of my life just in stress alone because, here I have a duty as a funeral professional to care for these bodies. And I also have a duty at home to my family and to protect my family. and it's a very, very, very narrow tightrope to walk. And so everything that I could possibly do to protect them. And the first 14 days, 14 days is like the magic number, right?
Right.
And the first 14 days were so stressful because I try to keep myself quarantined completely in the basement for that time. And after the 14 days, I felt like, okay, I'm not showing any symptoms. I'm not showing any transference. I'm not, I feel pretty safe in the steps that I'm doing. And I'm very, very careful when I put my PPEs on. I'm doing it in a mirror, and I'm checking my hairnet, I'm checking my mask, and I'm breathing through the mask, making sure I don't smell any outside things. And I'm looking all over, making sure that I'm perfectly, duplicate every time the same way. That can be very stressful and daunting. But yeah, kiddos are important, and I know a lot of funeral directors and embalmers have kiddos at home, and they care about them very deeply. They don't want to introduce them to that. So just be very careful.
Very much. Well, I know you have to get off to go take care of some deceased. So I appreciate this time and just sharing what's been going on with you, and caffeine up and get back to work.
Yeah, we're going back at it again today. I'm looking forward to this slowing down. It's been very, very tough, very difficult. And it's affected everyone. Just pray that it's over soon. So thanks, Kari.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. As I've been trying to line up some interviews and chat with embalmers and funeral directors across the country, I have been having to reschedule a lot with those that are out on the East Coast, especially in New Jersey and New York, because of how busy they are. I appreciate their work. I appreciate the long hours, the endless hours that they are putting in. But I wanted to share one of their stories. Jen from out in New Jersey sent me a message. She's been posting it to her Facebook, just trying to let people have a glimpse as to what her life is like right now in the chaos that is ensuing from the pandemic because of how many deaths are occurring. So here are some words from Jen. Friends, I've remained quiet these past few weeks, mainly because it is what we are trained to do. Operate quietly in the background. However, it has become increasingly difficult these past few weeks to carry out my duties as I normally would, and I would like to ask you humbly to add funeral service professionals to your prayers, thoughts, and meditations. Currently, especially here in Teaneck, Bergen County, and the tri-state area, your funeral directors are literally working around the clock. We work hard all day and are on call all night. We never close. We always take your call. Many of us do not get a break. We don't work in shifts and get to go home undisturbed for a day, a night, or a 12-hour period. The influx of calls we are fielding and handling has tripled or quadrupled in a matter of days, conservatively. Our own families are worried and afraid because we leave the house daily and we're exposed multiple times a day. We don't go to one hospital. We don't go to one nursing home. We go to all of them. We are in hospitals and morgues and refrigerated trucks. We're in storage places and dangerous situations. We come into your home. We put ourselves at risk every day. We gently, respectfully, and reverently handle and care for your loved ones when you call on us, without fail. We sacrifice more than can be considered in this post, and we do it with dignity and pride at all times. Are we tired? Hell, yes. Are we sad? You better believe it. Are we overburdened and overtasked? Without question. Are we perfect? No. Are we doing everything we can to help? We are. Are there conditions and mandates and legitimate concerns for our own personal safety that limit what we can and cannot do in this time? There are. So I'm breaking my silence now to ask you to remember us. We are not considered workers on the front lines, but believe me, we are. Though we are essential, we are not afforded the same status those caring for the living. We need PPE too, but can't get it. If you can donate, consider your local funeral home or funeral director. Remember that when you call, you might be the fifth 15th or 29th call of the day, and we are struggling to keep up. We need your kindness and patience as much as you need ours. Your loss is as significant as every family who calls on us, and we are really doing our best to care for you all to the best of our ability and capacity. We are operating in uncharted territory, and we are adjusting to changing rules and regulations and demands. We are adapting as quickly as possible. Our stress level is beyond what many, if not most, in the industry have ever experienced. Our hearts are heavy. We continue to serve. As we say in Teaneck, we are many, we are one. Stay safe, be well, and if you need me, call. So thank you to Jen for sending words in a time that even a 15-minute video is not possible for you to meet up with me to do. I understand and I know, and hopefully we can get a little FaceTime soon to kind of go over the things you've been experiencing, the 5 a.m. lineups at the crematory to see if you can get a cremation scheduled for the day, or trying to find new ways to arrange deceased in your funeral home because you've run out of tables and cots and storage space to hold on to people's loved ones. So we're thinking of all of you, especially those in such populated, busy areas like on the East Coast. Thank you to all the embalmers. And I'd like to close out today's video with more faces from the front line. Thank you, everyone.